So imagine walking into a north-facing unit with lots of light, but it was a unit with the absolute minimum ceiling height you're allowed to do. And from the ceiling, you have five chandeliers. So this isn't a very high ceiling castle. It's not a ornate 3 meter or 3.5 meter ceiling. You're talking the 2.4 meters that are the absolute minimum of
And
square
chandeliers.
chandelier hanging off. Five chandeliers in a little two-bedroom unit. Wow.
Okay. That is a wow, isn't it?
Easy to fix. But remember what I learned? I learned that the strata report is possibly more important than the condition. Because through experience, I knew I could rip things out, put things in, change a light fitting, send an electrician in to unscrew something and just put in an oyster light, something that was less intrusive. That was okay, that was a given. I've seen it on TV, I've seen it on YouTube. Okay, easy. If you were on that auction day with me, I came in with numbers from the strata. It was a 409-page strata report that, yes, I read every page. I flicked through most of them because I could see they weren't relevant, but I read some very interesting reports on what was fixed in other units in the same block. So
Aha.
imagine walking in with me. I'm standing there in carpet that had dust coming off it. The original carpet was circa 1970, meaning that when it was
Green
first
shag pile?
installed, it was around 1970. Maybe back in 1970, it used to be a shag pile. Now it had trenches. What do I mean by that? I mean, you could see the regular path that people were walking from the couch to the kitchen worn through the carpet. So you could see a different level of carpet in the trenches. Wow.
Oh. Yeah,
But
wow.
that wouldn't phase you, would it, Tony?
Well, you can always remove carpet. It's removable. Yes.
So now I'm dressed in builder's clothes. What do I mean? Steel cap boots, um, long trousers, but a few, more than a few splashes of paint on them, and a hoodie that I use whenever I do renovation work. And I'm standing in a room of 20 people in Randwick on an auction day.
Yeah.
Who would like to start the bidding? There was the gentleman in the front wearing a suit and tie and obviously had a lot more energy than the other suits in the room. If you can imagine big balcony doors, open
Mm.
wide, letting in the
Mm.
fresh air of
Mm.
the springtime. You can
Yes.
hear the splashing from the pool downstairs. Little kids are playing in the pool.
Ah.
You can hear birds
Yes.
flying by with palm trees. As soon as you look out the balcony, you can see palm trees through the sliding doors.
Yeah.
Beautiful, gorgeous area. Middle of Randwick, great
Yes.
location. Facing north,
Yeah.
some east, some west, but mostly north aspect. Lots of light coming in. Ticks the boxes so far. Read the strata report. The
Yes.
strata report looks great. Now, this is where you'll laugh. Pay attention to this. There was a crack that went from the worn out carpet, floor to ceiling. The whole wall had a massive crack, and it wasn't something you could just hide with
Oh.
paint. The crack went all the way through. And from one of the bedrooms, you could see light coming through the crack. That's right. You could see light from the other side of the wall coming through the crack. That means it was a
Oh
proper
gosh.
surface crack, proper crack. So 20 people, some dressed in suits. You could tell they were the real estate agents. The auctioneer standing in the focal point of the room on top of this dusty carpet, but the air outside made it seem as if there was potential for it to be converted into a luxurious apartment, or at the very least, clean and dust free.
Yes.
Through the whole campaign, we've been talking about this unit being between 800 or high, eight, maybe mid eights, 800,000. Who would like to start the bidding? Now, if you did the research like I did, you'd notice that the last 6 units in the same block sold between 800 and 920. So these guys weren't just pulling numbers out of thin air. This was based on research. If I used the old method that I used to use, which was going onto the internet and doing my research, I'd come up with the same numbers. But I knew a little more.
I see.
Have you ever been in a room where you felt that you did enough homework to be able to be certain? Have you ever been in that situation where you just had that
Yes.
confidence in yourself? That confidence in yourself.
Yes.
That's so imagine the bidding. The bidder's asking for 800,000 or somewhere around that. I could see the other 6 people with paddles in their hand, and they were the registered bidders. So you could tell just by looking around. It doesn't matter whether somebody's dressed in smart casual, whether they're in a suit, or whether they're just dressed like me as builders. With the bidding paddle. If they're not bidders, they're not there. They're just spectators. They're probably the next door neighbours, just curious.
Curious.
So the 6 people that had bidding cards around me, I knew that I had some competition in front of me. 400,000. The auctioneer took a beat and said, I'm sorry, through the whole campaign, we've been explaining, and I'm sure the real estate agents here did a great job of giving you the expectation that this property should be selling at over the 800. So if there's any bid closer to the 700, we're happy to accept that, but I'm afraid I can't start at that. Is there anybody else willing to bid higher? Nobody answered. Out of the 20 people in the room, and the 6 like me with bidder's card, nobody could miss the big crack in the wall. So it doesn't matter what the other units saw. There's no way a unit in the same building would sell for as much as the others. And the real estate agents. After a few glances and a few speeches from the auctioneer trying to push up how valuable this location is, how great the parking is, how much it comes with, how everybody else is happy, how it should sell for this to this, he finally accepted my bid. Said, right, we'll start at 400,000, but I can tell you now that this unit will sell for more than that. So if you're here and you're serious and you want to walk away owning this property, make sure you put a bid higher than that. We're starting at 400. Do I have anything higher than 400,000? The next few seconds were silent. Then another sales speech explaining why it's so valuable, why this location is great, how eastern suburbs will always grow, how this is an investment in the future, how you can't go wrong with property because there'll always be somebody who needs a roof over their head. I'm sure you've heard that all before, Toni. Would I be right?
Yes, I have. Indeed. The talk up.
Finally, a gentleman from the other side of the room raised his bidder's card. I would like to raise $10,000. The auctioneer thought for a second. I think at this stage, the vendor would like to make his vendor's bid, and the vendor's bid will be 700,000. Would anybody like to raise 700,000? The British gentleman at the other end of the room said, oh no, I'll offer just the 10,000 above what that gentleman said, 410,000. I'm sorry, sir, we can't accept that. We are now at 700,000. And this continued with another sales speech trying to get everybody up to what they would love to get for a unit with a broken wall. Let's cut maybe 10 minutes out of this. The auction's now over, and I was the highest bidder at 400,000. So they invited me, and when I say they, I mean the suits. So think about this. I'm sitting now in a room. Everybody else who was a next door neighbour or another bidder has left. I'm surrounded by 5 people trying to sell this unit. The auctioneer left. He gave the paperwork over to the real estate agents and said, well, this is the highest bidder, negotiate away, walked out. And I'm sitting surrounded by 5 real estate agents trying to convince me that I should pay more for this unit. Have you ever felt outnumbered?
Yes, I can imagine that. I can
I didn't feel
imagine
I
that.
didn't feel outnumbered. I can honestly say I didn't feel outnumbered. Why? Because before the auction started, when I was
You
still in
knew.
my own house, I took my whiteboard out and I wrote the reasons why that unit needs work. So I itemized the things that need to be repaired and I wrote it on my
Yes.
whiteboard and I wrote a price on the whiteboard that I believed meant value. And if you add the renovation cost to that value, you'd get about 750,000. So I came up with 637,500. Very specific number.
Yes.
And the buying enthusiasm was that the real estate agents were trying to sell it from 800 to 850. They knew they were going to get the record for the building at 920 something, just like the other unit above it. But they were hoping for between 800 and 850, and you can tell that through the auction. I wrote on my whiteboard 637,500. What do you think I bought that property for?
60, exactly that. Exactly that.
Correct. Exactly 637,500. I had, before the auction, I had my electrician, my plumber, my carpenter come in and inspect to see how much they can quote me for them to fix up the bits that I want. I wanted the chandeliers gone. I wanted oyster lights. I wanted the kitchen ripped out and a new kitchen. So I estimated how much it's going to cost to do all the bits and pieces with the carpenter installing and putting a new bench top, etc. My figures that I didn't tell the real estate agents, but the figures that I could do it for, not if I was going to buy a brand name kitchen manufacturer, not if I was going to
Yes.
pay something to do a full renovation, not if I needed to knock down a wall and rebuild a wall, but how I could patch it up with my money meant that the strata, the people that were paying to upkeep the building, would pay for that big crack to be fixed. They would pay for the floor to be repaired.
Ah. I was thinking that earlier, and I'm thinking, now wouldn't the strata have to fix if it's an external crack on the building or goes out to the building? Isn't that their
Yes,
responsibility? It is, isn't it?
it is, but this was an internal crack. So the only thing that gave
Ah,
me confidence was that when I read the 409-page strata report, I could see that the unit above and to the left of me had a very similar issue. And the crack in the wall
ah,
was not caused by the person living there, but caused by the metal inside the concrete not being sealed properly in 1970 when they built the building, which meant that in
I
the last
see.
two cases, when somebody asked for it to be repaired, the body corporate, the strata, the group where the money was sitting, and remember, I checked how much was in the account, and it was
Mm,
over 400,000
uh-huh.
account. They would pay for the renovation, not new floors, not new paint, but for the
No.
structure. So I knew that
Yes.
strata would cover the structural cost, which meant that $100,000 to $150,000 that would cost me to do if I was paying for it, I didn't even have to touch that.
Have to.
I just needed to wait for it to be finished.
Yes.
So I
Awesome.
estimated that apart from the structural stuff that needs to be fixed, my out of
Yeah.
pocket expense would be $30,000 for a renovation. What do I mean by that?
Wow.
I mean the same thing that I've done 2, 3, 4, 5 times before. Rip up the carpet,
You did it.
put in new switches, put in new light globes, and put in new oyster lights. Really simple stuff, and a new kitchen. But we're talking about a flat packed kitchen that
Yeah.
just fits. In other words, you don't need to spend 50,000 on a kitchen if the other units around it have a 50-year-old kitchen. So
Yeah.
without overextending myself, I estimated that the cost would be 30,000. I won for 637,500. When the invoices came back after all my work is finished, the
Yes.
budget was 30,000 and we had spent 30,500. So very, very close to budget. What that meant
Well
was
done.
I put it on the market in the same year that I bought it. So I settled
Yes.
on the property in January. I sold it in September. Why September? Because I learned that there's good times to sell, and when you're not
Spring.
in a rush, you work out when spring comes. Why? Because if the
Yes.
enthusiasm's there, if people are reading in the newspapers that it's a good time to buy, it's on your side. It just helps you. We
Yeah.
sold the property in 9 days, put it on the market. Within 1 week, we had several offers. We accepted, signed, and got paid within 9 days. 9 days, we had somebody who paid a deposit against it.
Phenomenal.
How much? We bought for 637. We sold for 820.
Oh, fantastic.